Hi everyone, we're back here again today and it is now week 10, day 64 since I started the experiment. However, it's only been 5 weeks or 35 days since I put the waste in the pots. So let's have a look inside. Ooh, this one's still got bugs in it. Now this is the Bokashi spray and it's looking nice and wet down there. And I cannot remember if we had rain this week or not, but I think we did. And the weather today is so unbearably hot that I'm lucky there's a little bit of shade here at the moment. So, look at that. Now you can still see there's soldier flies in there. Looks like they've gone a little bit slow. It's a little bit what you call dormant, but that is definitely compacted down to a level trowel. And there's really not much more in there that you could add to that. So I'd say 1 trowel left. And if I wasn't doing this experiment, I would have filled this pot up long ago, of course. I wouldn't be waiting for all that to decompose. I'll wait another week and just see if that dries out a bit and becomes more like friable soil. But there's no reason why you couldn't dig a hole and plant that near a tree, because the bugs will find their way out, but all those nutrients will go into the tree, or you just leave it in your pot like I do. So that was Bokashi spray. So this is the Bokashi Bran one. I've got to tell you, the hardest part about doing these videos is lining up the camera. There's a little wormy. A few little bugs flying out. Nothing to be worried about though. Now remember, this one had a lot thicker and denser. Wow, this is a very, very different result to what I'm used to. So this is the Bokashi Bran, and it's increasing in soil density and quantity as it breaks down. So that's, there's easily 2. How can I put this in? There we go. Let's get this thing here. I've got a bowl here. So that's 1 heaped trowel. And that is another heaped trowel. So that is 2 trowels. Close enough to 2 heaped trowels anyway. And you can still see the soldier flies in here. There's one there. So they are still doing something. Now, was that a worm I just saw? Could it be? No worms in there. Oh, lots of bugs there still, see that? That's good and healthy. If you threw that out on the ground now, all the birds would come down and eat those little soldier flies. Wish you could attract some flies to it too, probably, that's the only thing. But birds eat flies too, so that can't be a bad thing. Definitely still lots of soldier flies in there. Really different result to the Bokashi spray. And maybe there's going to be a lot more soil come out of this in say another week or 2. So I'll have to keep continuing this experiment just to see how long it takes for this to fully turn to really friable soil. But again, there's no reason why you can't dig a little hole and put that around a plant if you want to nourish your plant, and the bugs will find their way out. Oh, and look, I've got something growing in the soil just here. That. Now that's not one of my usual weeds. There's another one I just destroyed. I'd say that's a squash or something. Something that's been hiding in the soil. Well, that's a good thing. These are the ones I don't want though. These ones. The scurvy weed. So that was the Bokashi Bran. Well, this is the one with nothing added. And look at all these little plants growing up in these grass clippings. I know that's a weed, and oh, that's a scurvy weed, I'm pretty sure. Actually, I'll leave it for another week and see what that comes out. My guess is they're little probably tomato seeds, because I get a lot of tomatoes regrowing everywhere. Now, look at that. So the roots are coming in again looking for nutrients. And this was the one that had nothing added, so again, another very interesting result. This looks very similar to the Bokashi Bran, but a little bit less so. Let's just see if we can get a rough idea. That's probably 1 and a bit trowels. So this one isn't quite as much as the Bokashi Bran, clearly not as much. There's a tiny little bit left in there, nothing to write home about. And this is very dense, it's really thick, feels like clay almost. Got a little few bugs in there. Not a lot of bugs in that little bit. Let's have a look at this bit. Oh yeah, look, there's still some nice bugs in there. But it's much denser, whereas the Bokashi Bran, the soil is really quite loose in comparison. So if you look at that, you could just crush that up like that, you'd think that was clay. So very, very dense. And of course that's a good thing, which means it's got a much greater, what do you call that thing? I can't really think what you call it. My brain's not working. Katon exchange ratio. So it's got so when it's like clay, it's got a much higher Katon ratio exchange value, which means it can hold more nutrients on each grain. So it's not a bad thing that it's dense like that, it just means it's different really. And you might get better nutrients out of it, maybe, maybe not. So that's with nothing added. Now this is the pot with the water added, and look at the plants, how they're just going crazy around it. They just sprouted up in the soil after I planted the waste in there. So all those nutrients and that water going into the ground, which is what I'm always telling you, is what helps your plants grow. This is crazy amount of plants growing. Most of them tomatoes. That could be a little squash. Bit of weeds, something growing over here. Anyway, water in this one. There's a scurvy weed, I don't want those. Quite happy to have other weeds. My hands are slippery at the moment. I should have twisted that other pot around in the dirt, doesn't matter. So this one is very much, looks similar result to the one with nothing added, in size at least. In size, you see that? That's roughly a trowel and a bit. So not what I'd call a heaped trowel, but a trowel and a bit. See, it's not quite full there. There's a tiny little bug there. Now you know what? It's quite possible that a lot of the salted flies have gone from this, because I cannot see many at all. Which is quite interesting. There's a few there. But these are quite small ones, which means that they've come in the last week or two. They haven't been here from the beginning. So almost like there's a second wave of soldier flies. Nothing in that. Again, quite dense, like clay. So you've really got to go searching for the soldier flies to find them. But again, see, squish that together, it's like clay. And perhaps that's, you know, I very rarely wait for it to turn to really friable soil. I just keep topping it up. But I'm sure once it goes through this stage and the soldier flies all vacate and the worms move in, it will, as I've shown you many, many times, turn to beautiful soil. Look at that little tiny copy there. It's upside down. Doesn't matter. So you do get little copies in here as well, but they're little ground copies. They're not an issue, and they are part of the decomposition process. So this one is definitely less soldier flies, slightly less amount of waste. So still a very, very good result, and incredible plant activity around this pot, which of course would have been helped by the rain, but if there were no nutrients in the soil, the plants aren't really going to grow anywhere. There has to be nutrients in the soil for them to grow. That's our pot with the water added. That's the method I use and that I usually recommend. You can decide what you want to do when you see all the results. And lucky last, the pot with the Bokashi Bran and then the water added at the end. Look at all the things growing up in the lid. Weeds and persilate, it looks like. Oops. Oh, a few little bugs in there. Now, what again is really interesting, there were no bugs in the one with the water. So this is the one with the bran and the water. And again, oh, there's a little Lizzie again. I think he likes living in here so he can eat all the soldier flies. I don't want to get him out, so I'll leave him there. But, so this is a little bit more. This is like one heaped. So which one had the heaped? Was it the one with nothing added? I think was the heaped, one trowel heaped. I'll have to go back and check. Funny how I can't remember what I did a few minutes ago. Terrible. That's what happens when you get old. So that's pretty obvious. That's one heaped spoon, one heaped trowel, if we're going by the measurements that I've been doing or the way I've been doing it. And not quite as dense though as the Bokashi spray or the one with the water. It's like a combination. It's half friable and half clay-like difference. So I can see and I can feel it, that it's not as dense. Anyway, my legs are killing me, I've got to stop. We'll give it another week and see what happens. Thanks for watching.